But there's also some concept and package after the first of the year. Trying to make it because.
That's fine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It was working way too many days, way too many hours, and it takes a toll.
Oh, yeah.
As you well know.
Oh, yeah.
God. That is losing my mind. Well,
What little you got left, right? Yeah. How's your house holding together? You good?
Not bad. Doing some work on it. I had John Peter come and cut some trees down. And did a really good job on that.
He does a good job on it.
He did. Really good. Guys and old Dutch elms in the back of my house. And they were hanging over the house, you know. And
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I talked to, yeah, I still have some, everybody has to,
Oh, yeah, I know that.
I have financially, we have to, you know,
I-
what do you do this year? What are you gonna do
I
next
know.
year?
I know. Budget.
Yeah. Clean up my basement. Half my brother's stuff.
I know, we had talked about that several years ago.
Oh, yeah, guys, you guys were down there.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, my God, my brother's crap is in the one bedroom, my crap is in the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever coming back? Or which brother?
Bruce,
Yeah.
he thought that they would, but then, Wendy's mother died, and, Wendy had to go over, and then Bruce went over, and he said, well, you know, we're here, family here, so we won't,
He's gonna stay there?
yeah, and so now I got his stuff and I'm gonna sell it.
Okay, it's 5:30. We'll call the Sylvia's Tech meeting order. On the agenda, application for funds, paying with golf course. Who wants to be the speaker? Come on up. Come on up.
Well, I know everybody. Jason Thornton moved here with his family in the last year or so from the West Coast and is on our golf course board. So
Okay.
he's a marketer by trade, professional marketer, and he's helping on this particular application.
Okay. Very
Yep.
good.
Yeah, so I just want to take a minute to introduce myself, and for those of you that don't know me, which is everyone here, just kind of give you guys an idea of how I came to be on the board and involved with this project. And so basically, back in around 2008-9, I moved here from Seattle in April of this year, and somehow found myself as a member of the board at the golf course. If you're wondering how that happened, I am too. But so around 2008, 2009, my wife's family started to systematically move back to North Dakota from Washington State. This was during the economic downturn, and they're from here originally, Wing, New Salem, and everywhere in between. And so over the last 8 or 9 years or so, we've been visiting North Dakota, making trips out here to see family and hang out, and more recently, we've been spending our summers right here in Washburn for the last few years. So when the time came to make the move permanent, we had looked at a few other towns in this area. Ultimately, we decided that Washburn was the place to be. It had everything that we were looking for. We have a 4-year-old daughter. She just started pre-K. We're looking at schools, extracurricular activities, the swimming pool, the golf course, things like that. So last year during our visit, we were here for the summer and I was golfing. Every day I was golfing, and my wife had said, "What's up with all the golf? You're golfing too much." And I was like, "Look, if we're going to move to a place that is routinely under sub-zero temperatures, when the time comes to pack up, I want to have fond memories of this place." So I'm golfing every day. So when we got here in April, I got my membership as soon as I could. You know, I was calling every other day. The course is still closed, and finally they opened up, and I was up there opening day. From the get-go, I was playing almost every day. And so a couple of weeks later, I was playing poker down at the riverboat with Wayne Leadhome. And I kind of casually mentioned to him, I said, "Hey, now that we're here permanently, I want to be more involved in the community." And he just kind of looked up from the cards and he said, "I will get you involved." I didn't know what that meant really, but a few days later, I was walking the course, and he comes around in his golf cart, and he says, "I got to get up to the clubhouse." And I'm thinking, like, oh, it's closing down. It's kind of late. Maybe they sent him out to wrangle me up. I'm a straggler. People want to go home and stuff. So a few minutes later, I found myself in a board meeting with these guys, getting voted in as a member of the board.
Cool.
And so since that time, I've had the opportunity to get to know everybody that makes this golf course operate, from the board members to the golfers, the staff, the volunteers. And what I've come to realize is that everybody has kind of a singular vision for this place, which is to see it succeed and to see it be the sort of beacon of the community, and a place where, you know, a guy like me from Seattle, halfway across the country, with no friends and no acquaintances, a handful of family members, can be a part of the bigger thing.
Sure.
So I just kind of wanted to share that little personal anecdote with you guys, because I think that there is some value to that sort of thinking when considering all these numbers and all of these politics. And so that's what I have to say about that. Not really a great closer, but I appreciate listening to me run along.
It's a good story.
6 minutes or whatever it was.
And for some of us that have been out there working on this, Jason is what we're looking for, is somebody that, first of all, he brings a skill set that we can use, which is he works as a professional marketer. He develops ads for liquor companies, sells, you know, that type of stuff. He knows how to, he's trained as doing that and good at it. So it was really welcome having new blood kind of get involved. If you look at the packet we submitted, I want to give you a couple explanations for the request. And if you look at Wilton's number, it's 18,000. I'll explain where we came up with these numbers. Wilton is a much smaller sales tax committee or community, but figure around 91,000 this year, and that's pretty average is what they take in sales taxes, primarily from Senate. And they divide that into 4 funds. 20% goes into their economic development fund, and 20% of $90,000 is $18,000. And the reason that that number was picked is they have $81,000 in cash reserves in their economic development fund. And I didn't think it was prudent for us to ask for them to deficit spend out of their savings account. Just the ask is, you've got no demands pressing on the money. If you could divert the $18,000 for the next 5 years to the golf course, is basically the ask for Wilton. And then, historically with this committee, Washburn has doubled Wilton's contributions. In 2013, this committee supported the golf course expansion to the tune of $50,000. Wilton was about $25,000. In 2018, this committee gave $25,000 to the golf course. Wilton gave $12,500. So just in the precedential value, your fund is much larger than theirs. You have much more income. But just from the historical precedent, $18,000 was logical to me to request from Wilton, and then the $35,000 from Washburn. And the purpose at this point is different than when we've been in here before. At this point, we do have the golf course cash flowing, but barely. I mean, it's basically breaking even without our long-term debt. And our long-term debt is causing suppression, basically, of the course. The banks have been very generous since 2017 in working with us to try to get out of this insolvency situation, but they can't go on forever in that. And as we move forward and try to expand the revenues and stuff out there, we also have increasing debt obligations to repay that they've been forgiving more or less through this period. And what that'll do is basically keep the golf course in and here's some of the bad things that happen under our current financial situation. This year we had a bank payment of $30,000 due in November, and we did not have the money to do that. So how we got through that was a number of us made our next year's membership payments way early. Greater Energy advanced their pledges, so we were able to come up with the $30,000. But then again, we're going to start next year when we would be getting that $30,000 in April, when we were trying to get the cars open and people hired, that money's already used this November. And I'll just be honest, we can't continue to sustain, that's been going on a number, since 2017 now, we've been robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit to get the course flowing. What I would anticipate here is if you look at this like a normal business debt, $800,000 is beyond cash flow capability to repay at the growth rate we're at. In other words, we've grown tremendously since 2017. This year we lost 2 months of golf because of the weather, basically. So I would anticipate more revenue growth, but it won't be a doubling anymore. We might get a 20% growth next year with good weather. But at the same time, our margins are low, or too low, to give the banks security in refinancing. And that's really our goal here in these requests, is if we can get our long-term debt refinanced somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5, and that number was given to us before the Fed cut the rates 25 basis points, so it's possible that might be a high end. That does give us stability in budgeting for the short term, the 5-year term. And at that time, as our revenues grow and stuff, we hopefully can get this thing sustaining over the long term. But the request that we're here for is to, our free cash flow just in the next year or two is still going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's really not sustainable. Now, one thing I'll comment on the paper article, on the head shake, is we're not affecting the other finances, and I think you guys know that in Washburn. Mm-hmm. That's independent of that. So we're hoping that you guys, we made a pitch in our written documents that we do provide economic development and some of the other things, and with that, Jason and or the others would be happy to answer questions. But the whole purpose here is to operate this thing like a cash flowing business. We've taxed out our volunteers here the last 3 years, and we're going to need to get this thing operating now. In 2017, I understood the bank's position is we didn't know if we could save the golf course, right? We had way too much. When they built the expansion, basically the plan was get $600,000 in donations or pledges, spend $600,000 to $700,000 in debt to do the expansion project, and then 10 to 12,000 rounds revenue will operate the course, and the pledges will repay the debt. Okay, well, what happened is we didn't get the revenue coming in. The golf course had a number of problems that people didn't like, and we had lost a lot of business. So the pledges were used to operate the golf course as opposed to repaying the debt, which would have been ideal. And so now we've got the golf course operating, and I think we're going to continue to grow at a good rate. But we have this debt out there that's suppressing us. And if you do a survey of the golf courses around Minot and Bismarck, you'll find they're subsidized about 20 to 25% by tax dollars, normally property tax dollars that are paid to a park board. Okay, we're trying to do this thing without that subsidy, but right now we don't know if we can do that for the next 5 years. We can't keep up the pace because there's some expenses that have to come back in. We haven't been replacing equipment, and we haven't had a greenskeeper. That's been split between us. So as we get healthier, we also have more expenses. So this number, Larry and committee, is based on strictly if we get these tax dollars, it improves our free cash flow, which should improve our terms in refinancing, which should now kick us down the road in an operating business for the area. So.
I have a question. You mentioned a lot of golf courses, get money from the park boards, through taxes. Can you explain the ownership of the land and the buildings and the equipment? Is it all owned by the park board, or is it like does the park board hold the land and the association, or is there a Painted Woods Rec Inc. that owns the buildings and the equipment? How does that?
I can answer that one.
Okay, yeah.
So the land, which would technically be the buildings too, right, because it's a fixed, that's owned by the park board.
Okay.
The real estate. Everything else, the inventories, the equipment, whatnot, is owned by Painted Woods Recreation Inc. So the golf course, non-profit corporation.
Okay.
And essentially the history of that is the land is in the Washburn Park Board, but land was purchased and developed in combination with the Wilton and Washburn Park Board, but because the land is in the Washburn School District, the founders of the golf course just put the land in the Washburn Park Board's name, but it's historically been understood through the operations that it's a Walton-Washburn Park Board joint venture.
Right,
Not officially legally, but that's the way it's always been run.
okay. Yeah, I was just curious on that, you know, how that was split up, so, yeah. Questions? I mean, well, I guess I'm in favor of supporting the park, or supporting the golf course, you know. I don't know if I'm willing to go 5 years right now. I'm kind of thinking pledge 2 years and then come back and see where they're at, because things might change by then. That would be my thought. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I don't know if we want to pledge 5 years into the future.
What are you forecasting is gonna change? I mean,
I don't know.
what are you even thinking?
Maybe they'll get a big, huge donation from somebody, I don't know. It happens.
Well, I think the growth rate too shouldn't be discredited, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of really good ideas, aside from just the natural rate of growth for next year and the following year, things that we can do to increase revenue. So I feel like, and I know Lad does too, that we're on the upswing of something here, and we're going to make this golf course do big things.
Right.
And so your 2-year projection is conservative, and I totally understand that, and that's fair from where you're sitting. But we should also be considering the fact that there's big things that are going to happen for this course outside of just the day-to-day or year-to-year budget requests and policies.
And I guess I look at it, so a 5-year investment in this property is only gonna benefit the community that much more. I mean, 5 years of $35,000 obviously is a drop in the bucket for them. If they do get a big donation, great. It's gonna draw more people to Washburn, more people spending money in the community. It's gonna be a win for the community. So I think we do need to look at a long-term projection for these guys, because as a member of the park board, I mean, they keep coming asking the park board for money that, I mean, we don't have. We have a pool, too, that we need to be looking at. So, I mean, the sales and use money is here for this type of project. Why not commit for 5 years?
Well, I'm not saying we can't, in 2 years, commit for another, couple of years after that. I'm just saying, I think 5 years is a pretty long stretch. That's just my thought. So.
Larry?
Yeah.
I think one of the things, if you look at it short term, we're trying to refinance the debt for long term, and this gives stability to refinance the debt. And I think that's why the 5-year window is important. I mean, if you, in 2 years, there's more than one bank. The bank, Farm Security Bank and Bank of North Dakota are part of the, and so the 5-year gives them the ability and probably the basis to give us a long-term refinance. If you're looking at short-term and you have to come back and there's 5 different people at this board in 2 years,
That's true.
I just think that in order for us to have an opportunity, I think we need the 5 years. And having been part of the golf course since the beginning, I was president for 20-some years, and somehow Jason thinks he got roped in about 3 years ago. They came back to me and said, we need somebody to help raise money and try to get this turned around. And we've been successful at moving it forward, but we do need the 5 years of security to do this. And I think then you're going to see how big an asset it is for the community, and it's going to continue to grow. So that's why I think 5 years is very important, to get that long-term debt refinance.
Yeah, and I really think it is a huge bonus for the community. I mean, I support it. And you do have a good point, especially there could be different board members that absolutely hate the golf course, and they could just go.
Well, I do, it was kind of mentioned, but the bank did ask the course to try and get a little bit longer commitment here,
Okay.
so that we can put together a plan
Okay.
for locking this debt in for a little bit longer term to make this manageable.
Okay.
Because we have to sell it at the bank, the board of directors, we have to go to Bank of North Dakota, we have to sell it, there's
Okay,
a lot of change to go through, so.
that's a good point.
So this is a little bit coming from the finance side too, for some.
Okay.
And my comments shouldn't be viewed as adversarial to the bank, but as long as I'm involved in the golf course and I see $800,000 in debt with those cash flows, let's say hypothetically we have a good year next year and we're up to $500,000 in revenue and our expenses are $380,000 or something in that neighborhood, that's $120,000 in free cash flow. An investor in a business that sells stock would say that's way too much debt if you can't pay it off in 2 or 3, 4 years.
Right.
If we got a big donation from somebody, which could happen or something, I would be advocating very hard that goes to debt relief. That goes on our debt. Let's get that debt down to
Good point.
$300,000.
Very good point.
And
What about
then,
the Escalades?
you know, don't take that and go buy all new stuff and remodel the clubhouse. Let's get that debt to something manageable based on our projected cash flows. And until we get to that $200,000 or $300,000 in long-term debt, our balance sheet isn't going to be what I consider healthy. So that's my input. The board may not agree with me. I'm not on the board.
As president of the board, I would say we agree.
Well, I don't play golf, but I'm really supportive of the golf course.
Mhm.
It's something that I think is a huge plus for our community. I just think that we need to do whatever we can to support that golf course and help that golf course grow and get back on their feet as much as we can. 1 cent sales tax is I think it's a good thing for us to take this into consideration.
And it does draw business into the community.
Absolutely does. It brings people in, and the more the word gets out, this summer, who knows, maybe that'll be more and more people coming into our community, which, when I read through, I didn't read all of this, but I read a good portion of it. People coming to play golf will go buy their gasoline. They'll go, maybe they won't want to eat out at the golf course, so they'll go eat someplace else. Maybe they'll go play bingo. I mean, who knows?
They'll buy their groceries, they'll buy
Right,
their gas.
right.
I mean,
I just think it's a plus, so I'm in favor of it.
Are you looking at 2020 to 2025? Is that what you're thinking, like in January, to be January of each year or something like that, or what are you looking at?
I'm going to probably open this up for more comments from the actual board members, but I think we're looking for 2020. If you could
Start in 2020.
If you could do a payment in January, and then January,
every year.
that would be probably.
Yes, I mean, the members of the board, scraped enough money, for right now. I mean, there's not much in the bank, but at least the loan payments were made for this year.
I believe the census was that this would go straight to debt reduction.
Yes, that was what the discussion at the board was. We won't be spending this money for a new mower, we won't be spending it to fill up the beer coolers, it's gonna go to debt reduction. And I think that's a prudent thing to do, and that's why we're here, and that's why we think it's
It's gonna
important.
make the payment, I think, was kind of the main thought, that the money would go towards debt.
Any other comments?
I just want to make a plug, because I do this every time I see Mike. I'm pushing for this to be a year-round facility of some sort, whether it's tubing in the winter or, that clubhouse is out there. It's somewhat maintained in the winter. If we can make that into a year-round, whether it's catering or whatever, get that place rented out and do some of these other things. And the reason I say Mike is because Mike always, Mr. Insurance is going, well, but the insurance, well, there's other, golf.
Hopefully with this new group that we're forming, we can kind of leverage that a little more.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll be honest, I've put a lot of time in out there the last few years. Us volunteers have been running ourselves into the ground.
We
Turning this
understand.
place around. So,
And I know you guys have,
Yeah.
yeah.
A partnership with Parks and Rec would be great.
Exactly.
Because that would be a great extra set of resources to
Yeah.
help put this together.
Cross-country skiing, I mean, snowshoeing.
Any other comments? I'll make a motion that we fund the park board request for 5 years for $35,000 January of each year starting in 2020.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
You guys have done a good job out there, I mean, you know, I know how much work you guys have done. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I will also make a motion that it comes out of, I will make another motion that it comes out of, economic development.
I'll second that.
Give you a chance.
Why not infrastructure,
Because it's not infrastructure.
community development infrastructure?
Anyway, we have a motion and a second.
We don't want to
Discussion on
discussion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Okay, no other, nothing on the agenda, meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Glad you said that.
Yeah, we can take it with
No, and I agree with you, we just kind of haven't, you know, formally kind of.
We haven't had it one time for a while, have we?
It's been a long time.
I just thought
I think about last week, we had gone or something.
Yeah.
It's been quite a while.